Hey everyone, welcome to week 12 of Sustainability and Society. Um, this is the last week of full content this semester, so this is the last full lesson. Moving forward, you just have some presentations mainly, and of course some travel preparation to do since the departure date is on the 19th, so that is about a month and a half away, if you can believe it. Almost there. The weather's starting to turn. I'm sure it's gorgeous over in Italy right now, and we'll just keep getting warmer and sunnier until the plane touches down. So, lots to look forward to. So, just a couple of notes first. So, keep in mind that this week we have our next Zoom meeting. So it's on April 10th, which is Monday night at 7:30. Your main thing that you need to focus on for that is your history or food presentation. I'm really looking forward to these presentations. I enjoy anytime students present, but these are particularly fun because it's a good opportunity for you to educate others in the class on aspects of Italian culture, Italian food, and it can facilitate some good discussion. And you know, it's a good way to kind of start to get a little more excited about the upcoming travel, to start sort of visualize in more specific detail what you may see when you're there. And so, yeah, so I'm excited for that. That is Monday night, April 10th again. We'll also go over some travel preparation. We're reaching the point where you really need to start doing a lot of the travel preparation things. Nothing major. Really, there's not a lot of travel prep to do if you think about it, but we'll go over some of the key stuff this week as well. So that's a big one. If you have not yet submitted your group project proposal, make sure you do that. You'll do your presentation, your group presentation, the week after the semester's over. So again, moving forward, after this week's content, you don't really have much going on. There's a few things here and there. And I want you to be able to focus on your other classes, especially I know a couple of you are graduating, so I want you to make sure you finish strong. And so that way you can just sort of focus on preparing to travel and a few other minor things for this class. Okay, so this week, I've said it before, I'll say it again, some of my favorite topics. But these truly are, especially permaculture. I really like permaculture because it is a very holistic way to address sustainability, and you can apply it in any aspect of your life, and it can be applied at much larger scales too. So it's very much scalable. You can scale it up and down, like from a household level to a community level to even a national level, really, if you think about it. And there's some very practical applications. I also like to grow food when I can, and there's a lot of permaculture applications for food production on any scale. I mean, even growing food in a pot. If you have an apartment, you don't have a backyard, you can still use permaculture principles to grow some food. So it's a really great, I guess it's really a kind of a life philosophy. And I try to apply the permaculture principles as much as I can in my own life because I find that they are very useful, very practical, but also sustainable, and can sort of, it checks a lot of boxes. And we'll also go over transition towns, which is another kind of holistic way to think about sustainability. Focus mainly on resiliency, which started as a resiliency to peak oil, but it's kind of slowly morphed into just general resiliency with regards to climate change and economic issues and so forth. So it's another one of these important approaches to take to development and sort of operation of society, if you will. So if you want, you can start by watching this video. This will help you kind of visualize some of the practical applications of permaculture. Again, it's very commonly used in food production. And this shows you some really practical tips how you can use permaculture principles in your backyard. And so, I hope that after this lesson that you'll take some of the tools and the principles and apply them in any small way. Starting small is great, and then you can always move your way up to larger things. So again, your Italian history or food presentation, you can see the rubric here and everything, if you're so inclined. Of course, our usual lesson overview and a review of last week, which was water. So we went over dead zones and privatization, and a little bit about water and energy. I hope you found the content interesting. There's some really practical considerations in that lesson as well. And water is only going to become a bigger issue globally. So certainly worth keeping your mind focused on. Okay, so with permaculture again, permaculture is really just a set of design principles that you can use to apply to really any type of human settlement. It's a shortening of the term permanent culture, and so it started out as permanent agriculture, but it's sort of developed over time into permanent culture because it can be applied to anything, any aspect of human culture. So it's a really holistic. It's just so practical. It just makes so much sense when you think about these principles. Again, it's not this sort of one size fits all. That's really an important aspect of permaculture. You can apply it in an urban setting, in a rural setting. You can apply it, as I said, to your own household, to your backyard, even like a room in your house. You can use it as approach to personal relationships and transportation. Everything it can be applied to. So it's really just very useful. One of the key principles of permaculture is that you try to mimic nature and natural systems as much as you can. Nature, as we have discussed from the very first week, natural systems are self-sustaining. They sustain themselves over time. You have forests that are thousands of years old. Some are tens of thousands of years old, and they just work, right? So everything, the system is it's sort of like a system of systems, and this harkens back to systems thinking. You think of all of the different aspects of a forest, the forest ecosystem. You have like your trees and your soil and your animals and your reptiles, bugs, you name it. There's all kinds of little mini systems that all interact, and it just works. One of the important things about nature is there's no waste in nature. Again, this is something we have discussed before. Everything is reused on some time scale, some more immediate than others. But permaculture tries to mimic all of that. Think of, use systems thinking. Consider how the impact of, what the impacts of this system are on another system, and how you can minimize the negative impacts between those systems, but also within a given system. But trying to avoid waste to the extent possible, which again can be applied. It's a really good application for food production because you can use your organic waste as fertilizer. But we've talked about zero waste principles and other aspects, circular resource use, circular economy, cradle to cradle. All of that is really an application of permaculture principles. And so you have just a few videos here that introduce you to permaculture. A very short couple-page reading from Gaia's Garden, which is a really famous permaculture design guide. Here's a website that I developed that kind of explains everything from top to bottom. There's a few videos in there that I hope you have time to engage in all of that content. And then a few examples of permaculture principles at work. A really nice intro to permaculture from one of the originators of the concept in the 1970s. Not David Holmgren. Yes, that's David Holmgren, sorry. And then another example of permaculture. I'll also rehash regenerative agriculture a little bit because it's so closely related to permaculture that I just go over it again as kind of a supplement because regenerative agriculture uses permaculture principles. So if you remember, regenerative ag sequesters carbon, utilizes organic waste, doesn't till, enhances biodiversity, etc. All of that is part of permaculture. And then we get into transition towns, which again are based on local self-reliance and resilience. Really, the key to transition town is local self-sufficiency. That's really what it boils down to. Again, it's one of these things where there's no specific, one-size-fits-all solution. It's all based on your local resources, and the idea is that we don't want to be reliant on other systems, other areas, to the extent possible. We want to localize everything that we can. Localize our energy sources, localize our food production, localize our expertise. And the more we localize, the more we're locally self-reliant, the more we can withstand shocks to the system, right? So if you remember, resiliency is the ability to maintain your essential character after a shock to the system, after something happens. So economic collapse, climate change, flood, food, wheat crop failure in Russia, whatever. All of these things can impact what you do and your ability to thrive. And transition towns seek to establish this to be a self-reliant lifestyle to the extent possible. So, if there is climate change, if there are climate change impacts that happen, if you've sort of established your own ability to grow food or procure water or build houses or fix cars or whatever, you're less likely to suffer impacts from that. And so that's what transition town's all about. It's all about resiliency and local self-reliance. Yes, you have the opportunity to watch a TED Talk from Rob Hopkins, who's the one that actually originated the concept in the early 2000s, and then a nice little article from the Post-Carbon Reader about transition towns, and then along with permaculture, transition towns, there's a lot of very, very practical applications, and there's one that's I've posted here, a video about what transition farm here. And then, of course, your usual summary video. Okay, so that's really it for this content, and guess what? That's it for the content for the whole semester. I like to wrap it up with these because they sort of tie everything together in one sort of set of guidelines and philosophy. And so I do hope that this resonates with you, because both of these are really great ways to establish more sustainable societies. But also on a smaller scale, there's just so many things here that you can do as an individual to establish a more sustainable lifestyle. And as you'll see when you go through these readings and videos and so forth, I mean, one of the philosophies underlying these is like, we don't want this to be drudgery. We don't want to be like miserable and think about all the problems in the world and how everything is just going, to pot, and like we're so unsustainable. Like, it's important to recognize all that, but a really important one of the philosophies that I really, really like with transition towns is something called engaged optimism. And it's exactly what it sounds like. You should be engaged, you should be active, you should be doing things. Like, don't just sit around and hem and haw and be like, everything, climate change is, what are we going to do? And, we're getting all our food from all these unsustainable sources, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Like, there's a lot of problems out there. And I know that the reality is, that's the nature of a lot of the content in this class. Like, you need to understand what's going on out there. But the really nice thing about both permaculture and transition towns is they're like, okay, we recognize these problems are happening, but we need to do something. Like, just get busy doing something to address it, however small. And hopefully that if everyone just does something small, then it all kind of snowballs and we can establish a more sustainable society. But it's not going to happen if you never start, because you're so overwhelmed, or you just think all the world's problems are just so tremendous that you can't possibly make a difference. Well, it's worth a shot, like, it's not going to solve itself, as I think has been proven. So I really like that aspect of this, and I hope that it inspires you to get busy doing something, however small. Do something, and then do another thing, and then do another thing, and then get your friends to do something, and get your neighbors to do something, right? So that's a whole part of it. And have fun while you're doing it to the extent possible. It's easy to be, fall into a pit of misery, as it were. But you should, just, enjoy life. It's a wonderful thing for a lot of people. And recognize that you can make a difference. And that's kind of one of the main philosophies of both of these movements. And so I really like that aspect of it. It's meant to be as positive as possible, engaged as possible, as active as possible. And I think that's a really important approach to take. And I hope you do too. Okay, enough of me talking about all these things. As you can see, I really like these concepts, and there's a lot of reasons for that. So I hope you enjoy the content. And as always, if you have any questions, let me know.